We are, right now, as I speak to you, as you listen to my voice, headed towards a full-blown constitutional crisis. That's the growing consensus among a number of extremely astute political observers who argue the political dysfunction that's brought about a shutdown and is now threatening default isn't some run-of-the-mill gridlock. It is exposing the fatal flaw in our Constitution and highly distinct system of government. In other words, it's the Constitution's fault, and something truly catastrophic was bound to happen sooner or later. Here's the argument in a nutshell. These kind of shutdowns, the one we're experiencing now, are almost impossible elsewhere in the world because of the European-style parliamentary system used by most democracies. Just about ensures the executive and legislature are controlled by the same groups of people. But thanks to the quirks of our U.S. Constitution, which makes it possible for different branches of government to be controlled by different parties, each party, during one of these standoffs we're seeing right now, can plausibly claim that they're the ones that represent the will of the people. Now, the founders did this with the hope of restraining government, with checks and balances. And in the past, because of the unique nature of American political parties, which were stitched together from a bunch of different regional interests, not particularly ideologically coherent, divided government has led to some big compromises. Under President Eisenhower and a Democratic-controlled Senate, we got the Civil Rights Act in 1957 and 1960. And in 1981, with the help of Southern Democrats in the House of Representatives, President Reagan passed his enormous tax cuts. But that's not what we have anymore. What we have now is record polarization. And one party, the GOP, that is likely the most extreme, ideologically coherent, and demographically self-contained party probably ever in American history. They believe that despite losing the presidential election, being a minority in the Senate, and receiving less votes in the House, they have full democratic legitimacy. They're willing to do whatever it takes, no matter how unprecedented or destructive, to impose their will. Writer Jonathan Chait calls what is up a domestic Cuban Missile Crisis, where a single blunder could have unalterable consequences. The question is, can our constitutional system function with the modern GOP? Joining me now is Jonathan Chait, columnist for New York Magazine. And Jonathan, your piece has thousands of likes on Facebook, is an incredibly arresting thesis. Walk me through the basic idea. We've got the constitutional system that we have and the modern political party system, and you seem to be saying these two are on a collision course.
That's right. Now, look, it's not all the constitutional system, right? Because the debt ceiling is the most explosive part of the current showdown, and the debt ceiling has nothing to do with the American system per se. We could just get rid of the debt ceiling and have our elections and the rest of our Constitution carry on as it always has. But you do have a lot of factors coming together. And like several other writers, I described the political scientist Juan Linz, who of having a system where you have opposing parties trying to share power, because you can't always decide through laws who gets to have the power.
There's a great Linz quote, and people should be aware, and I think a lot of people probably don't know this, that our system, what's called a presidential system, where you've got the executive, one party legislature probably by another, that's rare. That's an anomaly across the world. And Linz says the problem when you have one of these standoffs, like the standoff we have at this very moment, is there is no democratic principle on the basis of which it can be resolved. The mechanisms the Constitution might provide are likely to prove too complicated and aridly legalistic to be of much force in the eyes of the electorate. In other words, what's the game plan out of the shutdown? What's the game plan out of the debt ceiling? There is no game plan, right?
There's no game plan. There's no rules. It's really a contest of willpower, and that's a really dangerous system for any democracy to have. You want to have rules to decide how do you resolve this conflict. Because if you can't resolve reopening the government at some point, you have a serious problem. And if you can't resolve the debt ceiling or the X date, you've got a severe total crisis, and we've got no playbook. It's just a matter of which side really wants it more, is more willing to endure the political pain.
And that gets